Ladies and gentlemen, this is the September 24 meeting of the Clarkson Montgomery County Regional Planning Commission. If you would, let's all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If there are not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I make a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, public and commissioners. Before I get into the deferrals today, I just want to share something that really doesn't have another opportunity to come up in the meeting today. In the next week or two, we will be releasing our housing needs assessment. This is a study we completed with a third-party firm to talk about the current situation of our real estate here in Clarksville and Montgomery County. How many houses do we have on the market? What are we building? What aren't we building? Price points, types of houses. It's got a ton of information in there. I don't want to even talk about the numbers yet because I'm still not full through reviewing it yet, but we will be releasing this for the public, and I think it'll be a great resource, and we'll make sure to get the word out, and anyone who wants a copy will get you a digital copy when it's out there for the public. Commissioners, we have 4 deferrals today. The first one is going to be on page 3. Z03 2024 by the Regional Planning Commission for Communication Tower Fall Zones. And then the next few will be on page 6. SR 37 2024 Casey's General Store at Tiny Town and Tobacco Road. SR 44 Ultra Credit Union at 2280 Madison Street. And the very last case on page 9, SR 57 2024 Holland Park on Wilson Road. Those 4 items are deferred until next month. We'll need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Spain Howard, I know you're up next. Y'all have heard me say this many, many times, but we're going to have we don't have but 5 or 6 cases here today for rezoning, and those cases will go forward to the 2 elected bodies, the city and the county. So if you've got interest in following those, the dates are on this agenda. We will allow 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against on any of these rezonings, and then we allow the applicant a rebuttal afterwards if there is someone who speaks against any of these particular cases. But keep up with those dates. Sometimes folks want to speak at the city council meeting or the county commission meeting, and you need to know they have different schedules. The city council votes twice on an issue. The county commission only votes 1 time. So if you want to be heard, especially for the county issue, you've got to be there for that one date where there's an opportunity to speak for or against that case. Mr. Tyndall?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Your first zoning application is Z33 2024. It starts under page 1 of your city zoning staff report. Actually, all the zoning cases today are city applications. First one is Blackjack Investments LLC. The agent is Civil Site Design Group with Chris Goodman as the agent. We're looking at just under 21 acres at 20.87. The present zoning is R1 single family residential, and they're proposing to go to R4 multiple family residential district. This would be an extension of the zoning classification, and this is for a tract of land fronting on the northern frontage of Ashland City Road, approximately 725 feet west of the Ashland City Road and South Rosewood Drive intersection. It's a tract with moderate incline and a single-family home on site. It is in the Clarksville Montgomery County Comprehensive Plans planning area, the Hilldale planning area. The applicant's statement for proposed use is they plan to rezone this property for a townhome construction. Finishing up there on the bottom of page 1 and 2 are the department comments. Call your attention to number 2. The city street department has requested a traffic assessment, was required, received, and accepted on 9/11/2024. You also have comments related to the Blue Line stream on the western property boundary, and the stream buffers will be required upon further development of the site. There's also a FEMA flood zone that impacts the property and Ashland City Road. The remaining comments from the departments we'll see there following. The impact for this proposed zone change would be increased multifamily residential density, accessible from Ashland City Road, served by city services. Historical estimates indicates 250 units with a population of 675 persons. As stated earlier, it is in the Hilldale planning area. The future land use opinion map indicates it's to be a mixed residential neighborhood. The staff's recommendation is for approval. The request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the adopted Clarksville Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan. This property is within the Hilldale planning area, and the future land use opinion map identifies the future land use as mixed residential neighborhood. The Hilldale planning area and mixed residential neighborhood use indicate that multifamily residential is appropriate for this tract of land. This tract of land is adjacent to a future greenway extension along the eastern property boundary. Higher residential density is appropriate adjacent to and in close proximity to greenways and multi-use trails. The traffic assessment indicated a right turn lane should be provided on the westbound approach to the primary site access intersection on Ashland City Road, and the southbound approach of the primary site access drive should have a minimum of 1 entering lane and 1 exiting lane. This property has a Blue Line stream along the western border, and the FEMA flood zone also impacts the tract. While these encumbrances exist, there's more than adequate area remaining to develop upon the property. Pages 4 and 5 are the aerial overviews of the request. 5 is a zoning map overview of the request. And as of 4:30 yesterday afternoon, there's been no formal public comment logged in reference to this application. If you have any questions for myself or the staff, I'll be more happy to try to answer them.
Okay, we are going into public hearing on this particular case, Z33-2024. Is there someone here who'd like to speak in favor?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Chris Goodman. I'm the engineer for the project, and just happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Is anyone else here who'd like to speak in favor of this case, Z33? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak against this rezoning request? Seeing no opposition, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, back in regular session.
Make a motion for approval. This request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the adopted Clarksville Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
We've got a motion and properly made second. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, Z33 passes.
Commissioners, Z34 starts on page 7. It's the application of Marvin Curtis Amero. The request is to go from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Two Family Residential District. The request is just a little over half an acre at .59 plus or minus acre. This would not be an extension of the zoning classification. It's described as a parcel of land fronting on the south frontage of Old Trenton Road, approximately 1,370 feet west of the Wilmer Boulevard and Old Trenton Road intersection. It's a relatively level single-family home site with some mature trees. It is in the St. Bethlehem planning area. The applicant's statement for this request is we purchased a dilapidated single-family home that we would like to demo and construct a duplex. The bottom of the page and continuing on to page 2, you'll see the department comments are received in reference to this application. At the bottom, you'll note it's to be served by city services. This would be an increase in residential density, and it would be accessed from Old Trenton Road. Applicants' estimates of building a duplex would be 2 units. Historical estimates would be 4 units, as this property could be divided in half to accommodate 2 duplexes. The future land use opinion map indicates its suburban neighborhood, and the staff's recommendation is for approval. The request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the adopted Clarksville-Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan. The St. Bethlehem planted area and the general land use goals recommend we promote multifamily residential in close proximity to major roads, existing jobs, and commercial nodes. The future land use opinion map indicates that the future land use of this property should be suburban neighborhood, and mild residential density increases are appropriate in the future land use as you transition away from commercial corridors such as the Wilmot Boulevard corridor to the east of this property. No adverse environmental issues have been identified as part of this request. The next 2 photos, you'll see the aerial images of the request, of which one currently on the screen behind you, and then the zoning map overview of the request. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to assist with answering those.
Okay, we will now go into public hearing for case Z34 2024. Marvin Curtis Merrill is the applicant. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this case? Okay, is anyone here like to speak against this case? Okay, public hearing is closed. Commissioners?
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman, based on consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the Clarksville-Montgomery County Comprehension Plan.
Second.
Got a motion on property made second. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, Z34 passes.
All right, Commissioners, your next application starts on page 13. It's Z35, the application of Mark Bullock. It's for just under an acre at .46 plus or minus acre. Presently zoned R1 single-family residential, proposed to go to R6 single-family residential. This would be an extension of the zoning classification. It's for a property fronting on the north frontage of West Rossview Road, 775 feet west of the Wilmot Boulevard and West Rossview Road intersection. Property has 2 single-family residential lots, only one of which has a single-family home on site. This is in the St. Bethlehem planning area, and the applicant's reason for this request is they wish for this to be an extension of R6 from the property to the north and would like to split the property into 3 lots for the opportunity of building affordable housing. You'll see the department comments are received in reference to that through page 1 through page 2. This would be an impact of increased single-family residential density, access from West Rossview Road. Our historical estimates are 3 units. It is in the St. Bethlehem planning area, and the future land use opinion map indicates this would be an urban neighborhood. Staff's recommendation is for approval. This request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the adopted Clarksville-Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan. These 2 lots are indicated on the future land use opinion map as being part of an urban neighborhood. Moderate density housing and small single-family lot development are appropriate for the future land use. This request has access to adequate existing infrastructure and other residential supportive uses such as mass transit and retail services. This request is in character with the development pattern for the area, and no adverse environmental issues have been identified as part of this request. The next 2 slides, you'll see the aerial photograph of which is on the screen, and then a zoning map overview of the request. And we did receive an email from an adjoining property owner in favor of this application. And I'm sorry it's not in the presentation, but I do have it in the file from a Mr. Eric Yao. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them for you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go back into public hearing again, this one being for case Z 35-2024. The applicant is Mark Bullock. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this case?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mark Bullock. I'll be the owner, developer, and builder of the property in question.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Anyone else that'd like to speak in favor of this rezoning application? Is anyone here who'd like to speak against this application? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Ava Cadell. I live directly next to this property. The zoning, it's showing that the tree line and my fence is part of that property, and it's my fence. So there's that issue. I've lived in that house for 9 years, and they've built the tall skinny houses on the corner. They built an apartment complex. It used to be like a nice little quiet street, and now there's like traffic like Wilma Rudolph going down that road. There's kids that go down the road. There's cats that live around there in the neighborhood. People fly down that road. There's one speed limit sign that's behind the dumpster when you turn on from Wilma Rudolph, and you can't hardly see it. There's no speed limit sign coming in from Fairview. So people just fly down that road. It's dangerous. And they're just building houses on top of houses on top of houses. It was a quiet little neighborhood. If I wanted to live in an apartment complex, I would go live in an apartment complex. I think it would be a fire hazard that they're building these houses this close to each other. Sewage is an issue. Drainage is an issue. When they built those apartments down the road from my house, ever since they built them, my backyard gets flooded from the rain. It never happened until they built those apartments. I think that's gonna make it worse. The road is very narrow. I don't know if any of you have traveled down West Rossview Road, but it's barely big enough for 2 cars to go down. And there's gonna be more and more and more houses on this little tiny road that there's gonna be more and more traffic. And I would think that speed bumps would be a good idea because of the speeding and the traffic that go down that road.
Speed bumps are something that the city, the people that live on the street have to apply to the city.
Okay,
And
how
make
would I
a
go about
case.
doing that?
So, yeah, the street department would be your
So I need to
contact
contact the
point.
street department. Okay. And what about the, I mean, you can show it on your map up there, the tree line and the fence, like that's showing that it's the other property and it's.
You're looking at an aerial photograph though, which is not gonna always be exactly the way it is.
Okay.
So,
We
That's-
refer to it as parcel shift.
yeah.
So the data points get a little bit skewed, but your property line remains where it is, so.
Okay, now I'm not understanding that they're talking about building it to 3 towards the north, so would that be the property behind our properties that they're wanting to rezone to 3?
It would be the 2 that are shaded up here on this screen here with the cross hatching.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, like the trees that are in the right section, that's my tree line and my fence.
What we're trying to say is sometimes the aerial and the parcel lines that are put on there by the assessor may be off by a foot or 2. And
They don't truly cross. Like it looks like it's catching that house, crossing this. They're skewed a little bit, so actually the lines, this aerial image doesn't depict what's actually in the survey.
Okay, well, that is my house, that is my air conditioner, and they can't, I guess I'm assuming somebody came and surveyed the property, there's little property markers with a little pink flag. It's right there, like parallel with the fence.
Okay. And that's, so what we're saying is this aerial photograph, these white lines here are not survey grade of where the property lines are. See, it doesn't cross across this house or this one. So ideally that line should shift in the aerial photograph.
Okay.
So,
and if they divide these properties, they will provide a survey And I think you've already mentioned, you've seen property markers out there.
Correct.
And the assessor will correct this map when a new survey comes in. They'll look at the whole street and sometimes it'll even it out. Just as each individual survey comes in, it can get off, and then depending on the angle that the aerial photo was taken. So we don't get down to this level. We don't use these photos to judge, are you 2 feet or 5 feet off of a property? It's a good estimate, but only a survey can tell exactly where that property line is.
Okay, well, I understand, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that they're single residential houses and they're proposing to build multiple houses on one less than a half an acre of land.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else that'd like to speak against Z35?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joe Shekinab, 637 Appomattox Court, Clarksville. I'm the city councilman for this particular area, Ward 11, and I have a question regarding R6 during the infill. Are they required to actually put sidewalks and anything? Because I've been addressing sidewalks for this particular area with the street department. So that's one of my questions. And then the next question is, what is the address for this particular property? Because it's a general location, but I can drive that street 4 or 5 times and I can say, okay, I think this is the spot. So if I can get an address, and then, ma'am, I can get with you, and I can get with Mark.
In reference to the sidewalks, one of the department comments from the street department specifies a minimum 4-foot sidewalk is required.
Okay.
Also, the R6 zoning classification requires a sidewalk as
Yes.
well, and the only way to get a waiver would be through the Board of Zoning Appeals in combination with the street department. So they're requiring it, so should be sidewalks. As far as the specific address, it looks like 139 West Rossview Road is where the
139.
home is located, and the adjacent vacant lot next to it, which is not
139.
addressed.
Cool, thanks.
Should be one of our signs on site as well, if you go down there.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak against Z35? Okay, Mr. Bullock, you've got an opportunity for a rebuttal. If you'd like to address any of the issues that have been brought up.
I don't have any issues other than I would say there will be a survey provided. Obviously, I can't take any fences down or trees down that are not on my property. Taking 2 50-foot lots that are 100 and dropping them down to 3. And I would be more than happy to meet with them after to talk personally about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Okay, Commissioners, we're back into regular session. The public hearing is closed.
Make a motion for approval as this request is in character with the development pattern for the area.
Second.
Got a motion and a motion and properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, the motion passes.
All right, Commissioners, the next application is on page 19 of the staff report. That is Z36-2024. Just going to jump ahead. One of the comments required by, one of the statements made by the street department was to require traffic assessment. At this point, that has not been provided to the RPC with an updated comment, so our recommendation is to defer this application for 1 month. But we do need to open the floor for public comments because they did not meet the time for automatic deferral. I don't think there's anybody here, but.
Okay, we're gonna have a public hearing for Z36, the owner being Austin P. the Fourth. I think this is an estate situation. Does anyone here like to speak about this rezoning?
Yeah, Cal McKay, 1545 Madison Street, McKay Burchett. It's probably my fault. I just thought it was automatically deferred. We didn't have enough time to get the traffic assessment done. I just thought it was automatically deferred, but we
Well,
requested deferral.
just didn't meet the deadline, so.
Yeah. That's the only one we're doing to
Okay, anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? Anyone who would like to speak against Z36, please come forward. Seeing no opposition, we'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion for 30-day deferral.
Second.
Got a motion properly made second to defer. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
All right, Commissioners, as mentioned, Z03 is deferred at least until next month. We discussed these at the informal, and I will go through it for you all again, as well as the public. Z04 2024, this is an application by the Regional Planning Commission. This is citywide and the Madison Street Urban Design Corridor. The intent of this is to amend the digital message board language and lighting regulations and update the Madison Street overlay signage regulations accordingly. And I will go through the slides first before I go through the recommendation. The Planning Commission was prompted by the Common Design Review Board back in December of '23 when they received an application for a waiver for an LED sign in Madison Street, and they wanted it to be studied further. The Planning Commission later that month at their meeting initiated the study on behalf of the Common Design Review Board. We provided an interim study back in February, March timeframe to the Planning Commission with an update and continued on. The bottom of the line of this ordinance is LED reader boards, which are the signs that have the different color LEDs, can change the text, the picture, whatever's on it at any point. There are 0 regulations in the city currently on those signs. Some have more use of signs, of images and words than others. Some are brighter than others. So we felt this was an opportunity to implement citywide LED signage regulations while at the same time looking at Madison Street, which has several grandfathered LED signs as well as some new ones that have been put up by public agencies. So to make it more of a fair playing field out there on Madison Street. On the right side there, you'll see the city digital message board regulations. So this would go into effect per the regulations we're proposing January 1st, 2025. This would not get a second reading if it goes through the next 2 months until November anyway. So that then gives 2 months for folks who have LED message boards to get through the Christmas holiday. They may have preset messages at that point, and it gives them some opportunity. We'll also be putting out some language and some literature to help folks understand this in a more visual term. So citywide, no more than 50% of your maximum signage was allowed to be a digital message board. The development directory signs, these are signs that are on strip centers, no more than 25% as a digital message board. And for those two things, we don't see this around the city except for maybe 1 or 2 existing signs that have been up for a while that are larger than those limits. Not on any residential properties. You can have 1 digital message board per property. If you have a multiple frontage property, it's been suggested to add it, and we did, to let you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a use permitted on review for a 2nd or 3rd sign if you happen to be a corner property like that. Images and messages should be or must be displayed a minimum of 12 seconds per image. If you go around town right now, I've seen some as few as 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. The intention is to, again, get your message across but not be a distraction to the driving and motoring public. Transition time should be instantaneous, so no fading or scrolling or flashing messages. It should be images or messages shall be static, so no movies, no GIFs, no moving images, no audio, no chasing or sequential messages, so you can't have 1 word per every couple seconds flipping through to keep your eye on that message. And the big one about nighttime is automatic dimming is required to 0.3-foot candles above ambient lighting. It's pretty much the general industry standard for nighttime or if, say a thunderstorm rolls in or something like that. Most of these modern signs should have automatic dimming or a schedule you can put your sign on to dim it at night. Now, and for Madison Street, we're proposing, so the overall regulations, I went and still apply, they would apply for Madison Street, but in Madison Street, right now, it says digital message boards are not required. We're lifting that slightly to say that 50%, but no more than 25 square feet on a pylon sign, or 20 square feet of a monument sign for a max of, a monument sign is a max of 30 total square feet, could be applied for on Madison Street and go through. The digital message board in any instance cannot be the only sign on the sign. So you still have to have your primary business signage or some other message, maybe the phone number, the name of the sign, and then the digital message board could be the other 50 or 60% of that sign, depending which type of sign you depend on using. And then when working with the code department on this, they asked us to add a little bit about lighting. And if you go through city code right now, there's nothing really regulating lighting except for some very vague language on nuisance. So we have added a section in the digital message boards and lighting about lighting shall be directed downward to include, sorry, this slide did not get updated. We took that little bit of language out where it says to include shielded hoods. Now it says just lighting shall be directed downward and shall not cast light pollution on adjacent properties. And in no instance shall lighting, whether it's parking, advertising, or security lighting, be projected directly into the public right-of-way. Staff does recommend approval of this zoning ordinance change. Digital message boards currently have no regulation within the city except size and location on a property. Digital message boards are an effective way of displaying messages when utilized properly, but when not utilized in a safe manner can become a distraction to drivers due to brightness, quickness of messages, or moving images. Madison Street corridor has long denied the ability of properties to have digital message boards, but with the amount of grandfathered digital message boards and recent new ones, it is time the regulations were adjusted. Neither the city code or zoning ordinance regulate property lighting, and there are several places in the community with light pollution in the public right-of-way or neighboring properties. This was also passed through the Land Development Advisory Committee. They recommend approval, and this also was presented to the Common Design Review Board due to the Madison Street overlay section, and they also approved it unanimously. I'll be welcome to take any questions, Chairman, and we do need a public hearing on this.
I do have a question, Mr. Tyndall. In reading this, are you saying the grandfathered signs will still be grandfathered, or are they now going to have to go to the new regulations?
So the sign itself, the location, the size of the sign will be grandfathered, but the message it shows as of January 1st will have to follow the new regulations.
Okay.
I have a question also. Was this done just by the staff, or did we call in some sign companies to actually review this?
Yeah, good question. We do have a list of sign companies that we involved early on to get some more information. We were not really smart on LED signs early on, about 7 months ago, and we got real smart on LED signs. We talked to a couple different of the companies that make the LED signs. So I know a lot of the local sign companies, they install them, but they don't make them. They come pre-made. So we had to go up to some of the bigger companies that make them and ship them in here. But we did involve them and have some email traffic between us.
Okay.
I'm gonna go into public hearing now. You've already heard from the Planning Commission and a number of questions that have been answered. Is there anyone here who would just like to ask questions or make a public statement about signage?
Chairman Swift, members of the commission, I'm Clay Powers, 3195 Highway 76. If it hadn't been for another mess going on down here, I wouldn't know anything about this. I happened to come to the meeting that happened on Friday morning, and I was pretty surprised to find out that all this was happening. And I personally have 6 of them scattered around in different places around Montgomery County. And I was surprised that apparently nothing was put out there. I did talk to Daryl Vaughn and I talked to Scott Harrison. Both of those gentlemen are working on those type of signs for me. Neither one of those sign companies were contacted. They knew nothing about it. I made an effort to try to get them to come down here today. But you know, there's several problems that I see with this. Number one, people like me that are extremely affected by that was never asked for input. And I feel like that that all of the people that are around town that have these signs should be asked to come to a sit-down meeting and let's discuss it, let's talk about it. And I feel like that has not been done. I know it hadn't been done. I didn't get a letter. I wasn't asked. And there's several of these regulations that are proposed that that will affect everybody here. There are some of these people that have signs in town, from what I'm told by the two sign companies I referenced, who do more of the work on these type signs than anybody else around here. Some of these signs cannot even comply with what this proposal is. And so I'm just curious. I'm told that mine, hypothetically, they haven't looked into it. Obviously, I just found out on Friday. They think mine could be made to comply, but what about the people who haven't even heard about this? And then this is just being dumped on them. The time frame that the seconds that's required, I would ask you, I would request that you visit one of the store lot self-storages that I have around town and just pull in, stop, and look. And quite frankly, I was gonna record it and try to have that here today, but I don't know if it's on cell phone or what it is, but it just doesn't look. It's not the same when you try to video it on your cell phone. And so I do have some of that fading, but I don't think that there is anything that's obtrusive there. One of the fadings that I have, it says Jesus is the answer, and it's on every single sign. It is not obtrusive. It's also a situation where there was hate speech being talked about in the meeting on Friday. Now you're getting into First Amendment rights. There's so many things that have not been addressed on this. And I feel like that this needs to be backed up, re-looked at, invite the people in who are affected by this and not just have it dumped on them. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Anyone else who would like to speak? I don't normally make motions, but I'm going to make a motion that this be deferred.
Close the public hearing.
Public hearing is closed. I'm going to make a motion that we defer this for at least 30 days just to have an opportunity to decide who might need to be involved more in the details.
Second.
Chairman, can I amend that to maybe give it 3 months to allow them plenty of time so we're not having to possibly defer it again in 30 days?
To involve all the stakeholders.
Okay.
Second.
Hold on. September, October. 3 months puts us right at Christmas, though.
4 months?
So if you're not going to do it 2 months, do it 4 months. That
Yeah.
puts us.
Friendly amendment of 4 months then?
That's a long time.
Second.
All right,
Okay.
so we've got a motion to extend this for at least, for 4 months to give us an opportunity to get in the details a little bit more with the right folks.
To get the stakeholders involved as far as what questions and answers they can get.
Okay, do we have a second?
Jeff Henley.
Okay, we've got a motion properly made second.
Can I just may I make a comment first, just procedurally of what the next couple months looks like? Again, we don't want to hit a Christmas meeting, obviously. 4 months, though, is going to put us well into starting to work on the new code. And I also think this language before you today also involves the sort of the unlocking of this in the Madison Street. So while I have no doubt that in 2 months we can get the sign companies involved more. and have a little more discussion on this, but it also holds up anyone on Madison Street from having one of these signs for 4 more months as well. So it's a little bit of both, and I think we can do it in 2 months, but it's up to the board with what they want to do. 4 months is on the board, on the tables.
Are you saying that the staff can communicate with the stakeholders in the 2-month time frame? You feel comfortable?
Yes, I mean,
That put us
it would
in
be near
November?
impossible to find every sign and put a letter in the mail to everyone that has one of these signs, but I think if we go from the top down to the big 5 or 6 sign companies that have this, and they can get to their big users, we could probably have a public meeting in 2 to 3 weeks time period. Give us another month to work on it. We'll update you next month, bring back a new ordinance in November, right before Thanksgiving.
Can I make an amendment to the 4 month, so,
Make it November
request
30.
down to 2 months?
November 30.
I like that.
So
I'll second that.
I'll get you the exact date of that November meeting. November 26th. I believe that.
extend that to November 26th.
Hold on. Let's say the November meeting, because I'm not sure what city council is gonna do in November. I don't have that on here.
Are we good with the 2 months or
Say the
not?
November meeting. I just
Okay.
wanted to give the exact date today.
So my amendment is for, to defer until the November meeting,
Okay.
general meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a properly made second. All in favor of this amendment being extended for approximately 60 days? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign? Okay.
Okay. And just to follow up what I've heard, we'll have a public meeting in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll report back to you at the informal session next month with what we've heard, and then we'll use that month to work on any final tweaks to this ordinance and bring it back in November. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right, the second ordinance before you today is ZO2 2020, that is right, 2020. I have the applicant down as the Regional Planning Commission. The applicant actually is the City Council of Clarksville. They passed Resolution 32, 2019-20, back on December 5th, 2019, to quote, study a creation of a design overlay district for SR 76 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. It passed the City Council, and it was to direct the Planning Commission to do the study and return the ordinance. Well, we know what happened shortly after December of 2019. Brent and I were actually setting up to have a public meeting. We were gonna send letters out to the folks on this map back then in 2020, and it sat for a while. And honestly, it probably sat a little longer than it needed to. A couple months back, I think in February or March, I asked the original sponsor, time to pick this back up, yes. And we did a little more work on it, had a public meeting, in August at the Crow Rec Center. We had about 35 folks show up from the community. We did send a piece of mail to everyone on that map, every property owner. And the intention here, as was directed, was to develop a Madison Street-like overlay. So the easiest way mechanically in the zoning ordinance was to take the Madison Street corridor, which currently does run, it's not on this map, but it does run east-west on Madison Street. That major intersection right there to the southwest is Madison Street and 76 intersection. And that has a design overlay on the Madison Street corridor urban design overlay. It's in the highway subdistrict and the residential subdistrict. And the easiest way to do this was to carry the highway and residential subdistrict, the 2 miles up 76 to the interstate. And this is the properties that front or are very close to Highway 76. As a matter of note, if it's a single family or a duplex house, design regulations in Tennessee do not apply to you outside of historic districts. So this doesn't really apply to the homes on there, but they're noted because it's part of the corridor. Also, the base zoning applies. That goes for parking, landscaping, setbacks, and height. The major 2 points of the urban design overlay that would affect the properties in this area, one is the high-quality materials, brick, stone, metals on all the buildings. And then there are certain signage requirements. Thank you. There are signage requirements that of 20 feet tall, backlit signs have to have a dark exterior, and the signage amount is reduced. We did, after talking to, after the informal, we did put the language back in for C4 properties that are within 1,000 feet of the interstate. That basically brings it back to New South Drive. There's already a provision in the code that allows those properties to have a 100-foot tall sign because they're C4 near the interstate, so we did leave that in the corridor. Because the Highway 76 corridor has had a great deal of growth in the last 4+ years, and a lot of that growth, not all that growth, honestly, has met or exceeded what our standards would be, except for some of the signage that has been included out there. This ordinance did go through the Land Development Advisory Committee. It did get a unanimous disapproval. This ordinance also went to the Common Design Review Board yesterday to the board. It was presented. They held a public hearing, and they also recommended unanimous disapproval of this. I will go on to read the staff report. The staff also does recommend disapproval. Since the overlay only applies to new construction and redevelopment, coupled with the growth of the Highway 76 corridor over the last 4+ years, the overlay's impact would be minimal. The growth along the 76 corridor has been of a nature that would meet or exceed overall regulations if they were imposed. Signage would be the most impacted along the corridor. The RPC and the city code resources would be further stretched with the expansion of the corridor. I think that sums it up, Mr. Chairman. I'll take any questions from the commissioner.
I have some questions. For one, I know one of the things you referenced was additional RPC and city code staff hours would be needed to accommodate this request. How many hours are you spending on the Madison Street design overlay, the RPC staff?
Sure, we have the one meeting a month for any new construction that comes through, and then every sign change, any maintenance, any small addition that isn't a new building goes through Brent Clemens in our office. So
You already have that,
depending.
correct?
We have someone. It would just be several more applications a month to that same person.
How would it be several more applications to that same person?
Any growth, anything that gets approved in that area, whether it's a sign change, an addition to a building, because not everything comes to the board, just like not everything comes to the planning commission. The Common Design Review Board only really has to see new construction or significant reconstruction of a building. So if it's considered, there's about 9 different topics, only 3 of the 9 come to the Common Design Review Board. All the rest are handled at staff level. So like I said, signage, if there's a landscaping issue, if you're replacing windows, or if you're doing a new exterior on a building, it'll just go to Brent for review. The rest comes to the board for review.
How much time is spent on that currently for the Madison Street design overlay?
I could total up the hours, but he could get that.
What did you speak with City Codes
Yes.
Department about it?
Oh, yes.
And their response was?
The Madison Street corridor currently has 1 code officer assigned to it, and he would also be responsible for this area. And we know he's already stretched thin on the amount of requests on the Madison Street, so the additional 2 miles of that would be.
So did City Code say that they felt it would be a substantial impact on them?
Well, City Code did request some additional code officers this year and did not get them.
I guess my question was, did City Code Department say that this would be a substantial impact on them?
I got an email from them. I can read it, but
Okay.
I'll put it in the staff report for City Council.
Okay, well, I was
don't have
just
it in this packet here, but
curious,
there's
since you
been
talked to
plenty.
him, I thought maybe you would know, remember how that conversation went.
If they tell me they've got an impact, I'm gonna take them at their word for it.
Okay, and I know you mentioned that, you brought it up to me. I was the original sponsor of this, the 5 years ago, that you brought it up to me a few months ago. Do we need to bring this back up? I guess, just as a reminder, I'd brought it up several times during the 4+ years since we first brought this forward.
Yeah, that we shelved it for COVID. Then there was a window that kind of COVID died down, but it was an election year, so we paused it at that moment. And then could have probably brought this back in '23. I think it just sat on the shelf with all the comprehensive plan that we were doing. We were very focused on that. I contacted you back in February that it was time to do this again. You agreed, and we continued it this summer. So.
What does an election year impact have, seeing as how we're in an election year right now?
The two districts that it were in were both running, so we felt it might not be the time to do something during an election year and wait till after the election.
So it was just another 2 years we got delayed. And reason I'm asking these questions is one of the reasons listed was that there's been substantial development in the last 4+ years. When the Madison Street design overlay was passed, was that already developed?
The majority of it was. The overlay was initiated, this is before our time, but was mostly due to the hospital moving at the time and the thought that it would create a resurgence of development around where the hospital site was, especially on Madison Street, and then radiate out from there.
And there are still properties that can develop on 76, correct?
There are several.
So there is still the opportunity for this.
Yes.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned, you said it was back in February, that was when you said you asked me about it?
I believe that's what, yeah.
Okay, and of course, we're all the way now into September. I'm glad to know that we can get a public meeting for the sign ordinance within 2 to 3 weeks, and here we are, it's taken us another 6 months for us to finally be looking at this. So I think all you had to do was change the dates on the letters. I think that was what you said in the public meeting that was held, that it was basically just changing the dates on the letters to the new meeting date, the date of the letter, and verifying that all the addresses were correct that you were sending it to, right?
We held the public hearing on August 22nd.
And it was a great turnout. Was there any negative feedback at the meeting?
There's some questions, but we did not receive any positive or negative feedback. There's some positive feedback from the public, the residents, about the signage, but we did not register any actual formal feedback. It was all just verbal back and forth with the attendees.
Well, and speaking of the signage, I'm not sure if you or anybody, if you'll notice the sign for one of the restaurants that's located on Madison Street that's also located on Highway 76. I know we're not supposed to say business names, so I won't do that.
I think I know what you're talking about.
There's a substantial difference because of the design overlay that's in place on Madison Street versus the sign that's in place on 76 for the
Yes.
same business.
Yes.
So it's quite a big difference. If this design overlay were to go into place or be approved by the city council, and something happened to that business's sign, would they be able to replace it at the same size that it is now?
If the ordinance passes and the sign is destroyed by more than 50%, they would have to come back under the new regulations.
Okay, all right. That's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm sort of the new man on the block. Explain to me what advantage an overlay does or does not do.
Overlays modify the base zoning of a property, so they can be used in multiple ways. Our community only has a couple of overlays. We have one around the airport, for instance, that says the uses near the airport under the runways can't be assembly or residential, and they can't be too high. We have one near Fort Campbell in the county that talks about night lighting and density near the ranges out there in the county. And this is one of the ones in the city, probably is our biggest overlay, is the Madison Street overlay. It's a design corridor. So it doesn't talk about the use of the property, but what should that building more or less look like when completed. So it has several different sub areas. It has a Hilldale sub area, it has a historic Madison sub area, it has a highway and a residential sub area. It has 5 total sub areas, each with slightly different rules for the properties. They all have some things in common, such as high quality materials and signage requirements. Some are more restrictive than others. And then some of the other areas allow the buildings to actually be closer to the road. Some have additional landscaping requirements, signage requirements as well. The Common Design Review Board, which meets the Monday before this meeting, they review any waivers or any requests for new construction in the downtown, the Madison Street, or the historic districts in the city or county. So that's the advantages of it, and that's kind of the basis here. The disadvantages are we as staff are not a big fan of overlays because we feel that why should one area be treated slightly different than other parts of the community? We've had other requests from other council members for other overlays. I don't believe an overlay is a magic fix to cleaning up an area. It also makes development more difficult because what is this property? What overlay is it? What's the base zoning? And then I've got to meet pretty much 2 sets of rules instead of 1 set of rules. Staff would honestly feel that the Madison Street signage requirements probably should be the signage requirements citywide and not just special to Madison Street or 76 in this instance, similar to what we just did with the LED signs. There's no regulations citywide, have some regulations. The city's signage regulations are pretty generous, and the Madison Street is more in line with a high quality community. So I think there's benefit to having that more be citywide and just be applied citywide instead of just over a couple miles of our state roads.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Tindall, I got a question as well. The county and the city just approved rewriting the zoning ordinance and the zoning resolution for each entity. Would it make more sense to get rid of overlays in general and just make those, like you just said, citywide or countywide, and require the entire city to have a little more strict standard on certain things? Or would it be better to just do it the way we're doing it with overlays?
So just first off, counties cannot have design overlays. That's a state requirement. So just to put that out there for those that are listening and those that are here. It is very possible that maybe the Madison Street design corridor does go away or does get reduced or changed. When we look at the code, everything is going to be on the table, but we do feel that we've grown to a point in history in Clarksville that maybe the bare minimum might not be what we need to do anymore, raise that standard a little bit citywide, whether it's Fort Campbell Boulevard, Wilma Rudolph, or Madison Street.
And does the staff have any data? Does the overlay district hinder possible development from certain restaurants or commercial businesses because they don't want to take that extra step?
I don't have any hard data on that, but we have heard over the years anecdotally that some companies have or have not chosen the district for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I'm gonna make one statement first. I spent 40 years in commercial real estate. If somebody walks away from here because the standards are too high, then we really don't want them. That's my personal opinion.
Yes, sir.
And because we know that that's not true, because we have the same things here as we have in Cool Springs, right? But there's a standard. So I don't think we have to go as high as that, but I think we should be considering what does the city look like overall? So we don't have to do a minimum, but we can definitely do a strong B throughout the community. I think that's a smart way. And you're right, if they don't want to do we don't want them here anyway.
Ms. Friedman.
Yes, ma'am.
My question would be, you referenced it a little bit here and also in the informal session about, you know, the Madison Street overlay going away. Maybe we don't need this one for 76 because it would be better to have one for the entire city. But seeing as how long it's taken us understanding COVID and comprehensive plan, and now we're going to have a zoning rewrite, which is obviously going to take up time, similar to what I would assume the comprehensive plan would take up. But obviously, that's something that would take some time. One of the reasonings being how much has changed in that amount of time since it was originally asked. If we were to put this off until something else could be done citywide, that could take another couple of years, be election year again, lots of different factors, and it take a good while, couldn't we then be further along the line than where we are now? Whereas if we did approve this instead and have something in place, even if something went into place later down the road for the entire city, couldn't that replace both the current design overlays at that time?
You're correct, and we're looking at a potential December 25 to bring back the codes to the city and county for consideration. So you are 15, 16 months away from that. So it could be another 18 months once you get through a second reading of any new regulation there. So this could potentially be a 18-month Band-Aid? Yes.
I mean, it could be potentially longer than that. And I think another question that was asked was, wouldn't we anyway, if you did something citywide, wouldn't you have some differences? And I believe you stated that, yes, you would probably have some differences for the various different corridors. Is that correct?
I would want to look into that further. I think bringing up a certain baseline is one thing, and then looking at, depends how we adjust this code. Again, part of code writing is trying to make things easy to understand for the end users, the property owners, the engineers, the architects, and when you have to double check which sub-district you're in, and then this one's slightly different than this area, it just makes it a little more confusing code. If we could do something more citywide, it would be beneficial, I think, to staff as well as the end users.
Do we need to have a public hearing on this?
Yes, we do.
Can we have a public hearing on this?
My questions.
I had one follow-up question real quick. So is there any reason why this ordinance just couldn't be changed to be citywide as it sits right now?
As of right now,
Be up to the city
It-
council.
Yeah.
we're answering the question we were asked to answer. We weren't asked to do it citywide, but I will tell you that's going to be one of the focuses of the code rewrite. I mean, we're looking at everything: landscaping, parking, uses, height, setback, all that. Signage will be another portion of that. So it is something we can look at citywide. I would not take this ordinance and just apply it to citywide, because there's a lot of other language in the code that would have to be updated simultaneously.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go into public hearing. Y'all have heard a lot of information already, which you may not have wanted to hear. But there are engineers in the audience, there are property owners in the audience. Is there anybody out there that has a comment that they would like to bring forward? We'll give you 3 minutes, just like we do everybody else.
That's good to see you. I'm Bill Summers, address 410 Savannah Trace. I was a city councilman out in this particular area, and I know Jeff mentioned going back to 2020 along with Stacy. The history of this actually goes back to the late 90s. The reason I know that was I was there when we organized the 8 neighborhoods, because we knew development would eventually come to MLK and Highway 76. And at that time, none of us knew what a zoning was. And we sat down with one of your predecessors, David Riggins. It was about 12 of us, and we ran about 4 one-hour classes on how you can work with and institute change on design guidelines and zoning needs. We took that to heart, and I'll take you directly into the Publix store and strip mall that's on 76 right now. We worked with Wayne Wilkinson, Richard's business partner, in putting restrictions on that property when it came up for rezoning. It was accepted. The reason that property looks a lot like it does today is because of those restrictions that we got them to voluntarily put into the deeds, and a lot of that is in the overlay. Now, Vaughn Road is what separates the Publix from the strip mall where the Dollar General and the restaurants are on the other side. We had done the same thing to that other side a couple of years early with the property owner. Those were the first major developments on 76 once you got past the interstate. They set the tone, and that was mentioned. But having been on the council and dealt with legal issues, anything that's not in code and writing is a suggestion, and a suggestion can be thrown out the window easily. Now, a little more history. Come up to 2006. I'm in the leadership Clarksville class. One of the team projects is beautification or urban renewal of some of the areas in our city. That was the granddaddy of the Madison Street overlay. I'm elected to the city council in 2007. We take that suggestion from the leadership Clarksville. Richard was on the city council with us. We had our public meeting, overwhelmingly said, yes, we need to do this. Publix on Madison was looking at the area where the old hospital was. And that overlay got in there, and that was part of the reason. And Publix had high standards to start with. They weren't going to let anything come in there. But we worked with them on some of the things was an overlay. They agreed to it, and that's why that area looks the way it does. So we had the overlay approved by the council that ran basically from downtown to the MLK Madison intersection. While I was on the city council, we had issues out to the city limits beyond Madison. I worked the effort to extend the overlay to the city limits because of those issues we were having. Got through with no problems, everybody was happy. And we talked about development. Yeah, the original Madison Street overlay was heavily developed. But as you know, we've seen properties built, removed, and everything else. We've been fighting for this since 2014. Yeah, it finally made it up in 2020. And it would be very disappointing, given we had a good turnout again, to see this go down the drain. We've been working on this since the 90s. So if you're talking about public participation, we've been there. And this area has looked for it. And to try to put this on the city, I would respectfully say 18 months is very positive thinking of what I've seen our city council operate. I think you're closer to 2 to 3 years. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to make a statement? We've got a lot of engineers in here. If they may not want anybody to know they're engineers, but
Point them out.
any property owners that have a particular issue they'd like to bring to the table? Okay, we'll call the public hearing to a close. Commissioners?
I see the passion in Ms. Streetman and Mr. Summers too. And I also see that we're gonna have a rewrite, and whether he says 18 months or not, it could cost the city, as y'all say too, to do this and enable it now and then have to change it. So, in my opinion, I'm gonna vote for disapproval as the growth along the Highway 76 corridor has been of a nature that would meet or exceed the overall regulations if they were imposed.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to disapprove item number 5, ZO4 2020, I'm sorry, ZO2 2020. Any more discussion? Do you hear a second?
Got a second.
Got a second? Got a motion we properly made second to send to the council a recommendation for disapproval. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Got 4,
We have hands on the
Think
ayes.
On which one?
Oh,
Ayes, yes for disapproval. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And then
Before we do that, can I? Okay.
against was also 4.
So it was
4 to 4 chairman.
the chairman votes for disapproval. So the motion passes.
the motion for disapproval passes.
That's correct. All right. All right, Commissioners, if you will go to page 4 of your agenda. We are now going to get into the subdivision section. We do have a variance case before us today, so we'll go over that first and then either have a consent agenda or public hearing on the following subdivisions. Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to make a brief statement about case number V10 2024 and S41 24. The project engineer contacted the RP staff following the informal planning commission meeting to adjust this plan to match the previously shown more continuous alignment of the public service road known as Caroline Drive on the plans. RPC staff has allowed this change to be included for consideration today due to the fact that it's already been reviewed by city departments and staff. So that is a change from last week. I just wanted to make you aware of, and I can answer questions. Otherwise, I'll jump right on into case number V10. Case number V10, the applicant is William Ballou, the engineers McKay, Burchett and Company. It is a request for subdivision variance. The property is located south of Tiny Town Road, north of Horseshoe Cave Drive and Autumnwood Boulevard. That is within the city, and the corresponding subdivision case is case number S41 2024. The variance being requested is to table 4.1 and section 4.32. No block or block face shall be greater than 1,500 feet in length as measured from the intersecting center lines of one intersection to the other. Careful consideration shall be given to circulation control and safety of street traffic, school buses, and emergency vehicles. The request is to allow the proposed extensions of Autumnwood Boulevard and Horseshoe Cave Drive to be approximately 2,800 feet in length. This total length may vary slightly as the exact location of the frontage road may change a little bit. You can see the next line is the justification provided by the applicant. The following page is the staff review of the variance application. Sorry, some technical difficulties. Department comments are on the following page. There were none of any concern provided. Page 6, you'll see the aerial overview of the site. On page 7, you'll see the variance exhibit that was provided by the engineer. If you would like to see the proposed subdivision, it's on page 12 of your packet. And if there's any questions for the staff, I'll be happy to try and answer those. Thank you, Commissioners. We will need a public hearing.
Okay, we're going to go into public hearing for case V10 2024, William Ballou being the applicant. Is anyone here who'd like to speak for this particular case?
Commissioners, Cal McKay again, 1545 Madison Street. We're the engineer for the project. We're asking for a block length initially. That one section of Caroline Drive, our initial submittal had it further south, which met subdivision regs. After discussions back and forth with staff, we moved it up where Caroline is more of a straight shot across from east to west, west to east, and that's the reason for the block length variance.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of V10? Anyone in favor? Okay, do we have anyone here who is against V10? Anyone against? Public hearing is closed. We're back in the regular session, Commissioners.
Motion for approval of V10.
Second.
Got a motion and a properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
All right. Public, we do have two subdivision cases on the agenda today, S41 and S65. All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the staff of the Regional Planning Commission and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the audience, commission, or staff may request that an item be removed for separate consideration. The staff does not need to remove either of these for separate consideration. Does anyone from the public need to remove either S41 or S65 for an individual public hearing? 65. Anyone on S41? Any commissioners need to discuss S41 separately? All right, Mr. Chairman, we can have a consent agenda on S41, and then we'll have to have a public hearing on S65.
We just go one item, okay.
Yeah, just do a
Okay.
consent agenda on 41.
Good. We have a consent agenda for S41, Commissioners.
I'll just ask for procedural purposes, Mr. Parker will read the conditions into the record.
Sure. Case number S4124. The applicant is William Ballou for Autumnwood Farms Cluster Revised Preliminary. Properties located north of Hazelwood, south of adjacent to Tiny Town Road, north of and adjacent to the current termini of Autumnwood Boulevard and Horseshoe Cave Road. The zoning is R2 in the city, and the recommendation is for preliminary plat approval subject to the 8 conditions listed. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, Commissioners, this is on the consent agenda, so there's no public hearing, so I need a motion to approve.
Move for approval based on staff recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay.
Case number S65-2024, the applicant is Ligon Home Builders LLC. The subdivision is Gold Landing preliminary plat. Property is located west of Bell Road and north of Needmore Road, south of Ann Drive. It's approximately 11.96 acres with 64 lots plus or minus proposed. Current zoning is R2 and R3, and it is within the city. If you'll go to page 26, you'll see the aerial overview of the site. The following page is the proposed preliminary plan. A couple of things I'll point out on this is that it does now tie into Bell Road. There are improvements to Bell Road that are proposed with the maximum right-of-way width of 20 feet. That's what's being proposed as a pavement. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I'll go back to the recommendation and conditions. The staff recommendation is for approval subject to the following 4 conditions. Approval from the Clarksville Street Department to include roadway improvements, grading and water quality, and driveway access locations to the public right-of-way. Approval of all utility plans by the city engineer's office or the utility district official. Off-site sewer lift station upgrades required, and association recorded to address open space. Department comments are listed below that. And if there's any questions for the staff, I'll be happy to try and answer those. Thank you.
I'll also point out on your tablets, we did receive several emails, and they are also behind the plat on your tablets.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now into public hearing for case number S65, 2024. Ligon Home Builders LLC is the applicant. Do you have anybody here who'd like to speak in favor?
Good afternoon, Cal Burchett. We're the engineer working on this, and I know y'all saw this a few months ago. It looked a little different. We did work with the planning staff and street department, fire department to come up with this plan to widen Bell Road and meet the subdivision regulations internally. So we're good with the conditions on this, and we'll continue to work with the departments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Purchase. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of S65? Anyone who would like to speak against S65?
Members of the Commission, hello. My name is John Cristiano. I reside at 2794 Ann Drive. I stand here today to express my strict opposition to the proposal of S65-2024 for Gold Landing development. Despite the proposal itself and the redesign and the resubmission, the proposed plan remains fundamentally flawed and poses significant hazards and risks to our community's safety, existing character and nature, as well as the infrastructure itself. There's inadequate stormwater management in the area. The open space of 2.21 acres listed on the design fails to address the critical issue of water displacement previously documented and submitted to this commission. There's been no redesign or restructuring of the stormwater management in the system of the area. I've repeatedly reported this severe floodings multiple times, and has been it renders more than half of my half-acre property unusable multiple times a year. Situation undermines the existing property values and also poses significant risks to existing homes in the area. Building to displace additional water and directing additional storm water without clear drain design and a promise from the developers is completely unacceptable. If they're going to build, they have to partner with stormwater management properly. There's safety and traffic concerns, secondly. Ann Drive is designed as a dead end with multiple cul-de-sacs down there. Vehicles must travel 10 to 15 miles an hour to avoid hitting children. It is incredibly detrimental to increase the traffic flow down there. There is currently a double-blind downhill curve that remains a traffic concern. And extending Ann Drive into a new development will change the entire traffic pattern for the entire neighborhood and change that flow negatively, potentially causing problems for years to come. Thirdly, there is a disregard for the existing neighborhood based on the existing proposal. Gold Landing is and should never be an extension of Glen Ellen. This introduces a zoning change that does not align with the current R2 zoning of the community, and it affects the neighborhood's cohesive definition and nature. Lastly, the overburdened infrastructure of the area, adding 64 lots approximately, raises concerns about the local infrastructure, which is currently operating at about 92% or greater of the Glen Ellen School District. And there's already heavy school traffic there multiple times a day, which is already incredibly dangerous. The proposed lot density exceeds what can be sustainably supported by the neighborhood. As a reminder to this commission, on February 27th of this year, the case was recommended for disapproval because the proposed zoning request was found inconsistent with the adopted land use plan, and the proposed R3 moderate density residential district was found not in character with the surrounding development pattern. However, unfortunately, the R3 went through. It is my strong recommendation, based on the withdrawal of the previous case, to default back to the AG R1 that was previously there. Lastly,
Sir, got to bring it to a close.
I understand, sir. I recommend you deny the variances for this. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like to speak against S65?
That's right.
Yeah, hi. Brad Morrow, 2783 Ann Drive. You pretty much heard everything that needed to be said from John there. I just want to throw a little extra on there. This, we're talking about a plat for zoning that really shouldn't have gone through in the first place. It was done under dubious circumstances, under false pretenses. You guys, you received, the city council received a recommendation to disapprove the rezoning from this body. But it was rezoned over the recommended disapproval. None of the landowners in the area, none of the people in the neighborhood thought that would happen, so nobody showed up to the city council meeting to speak about it. Promises were made by the previous owners about extending Bell Road. It requires that the Atkins family sells their property at the end of Bell Road. I don't know what promises we have that they're gonna do that. Where's the next rug pull gonna come from? The developer wants to say that they're gonna extend Bell Road, they're going to make that connection, but there's nothing in writing, there's no promise that says they're absolutely guaranteed to do that. So what assurances do we have? And when that doesn't happen, Ann Drive, a cul-de-sac neighborhood that's, the road's like 20 feet wide, people park on the curb, kids play in the street, that becomes the main thoroughfare for 64 units. We have a neighborhood there of 0.3 acre single family homes, and you're gonna cram in lots that are half that size, double or triple the density. It doesn't make any sense. I understand putting property to its highest and best use. That's great. Come back with something that's continuous with the neighborhood as it exists right now. Come back with a 30 home, third of an acre lot plan, and maybe there wouldn't be so much pushback, but this is ridiculous. And there's no assurance that they're gonna do what they say they're gonna do. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other opposition to this site plan? Okay, Mr. Burchett, you've got an opportunity for a rebuttal.
All right, the first thing, I'll try to address the drainage. We do know this isn't a platted 100-year floodplain on the north of the property, and we'll work with the street department to meet the stormwater management manual. They will make sure that we don't raise that 100-year floodplain, and those plans will be reviewed. Bell Road will be widened. It is in writing on our plan. I know the planning commission would not sign a final plat until that's done, and the street department wouldn't either. So it is in writing, and that will be done. I think that does help the traffic flow from our meetings with the street department, fire department. All of them wanted that roadway widened and connected and felt that that would help traffic in the area. We do meet the zoning ordinance, as this was rezoned, and the subdivision regulations, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions I missed, or if y'all have anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. Okay, the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, could you at least explain to the gentleman what our process here is, the planning commission, and what our responsibilities are, so that we make a recommendation?
I'm punting here.
So you heard a little bit today from both the speakers against it about the zoning versus the subdivision. And while they are correct in stating that the staff and the planning commission, I believe unanimously, were against the city council approving it, the city council is the ultimate legislative authority for updating the zoning ordinance. And it did pass, I believe, 8-4, 8-5, something in that range. It had one more vote than the minimum needed to pass it. For the record, we were a little shocked by that decision, but it did go through. I believe it also at second reading also passed. So all the public hearings, the notification, the vote, I believe it was all proper. It was all above board, whether or not you agree with the outcome. So this board has now got to shift to our responsibility over subdivisions and site plans. And as was stated by the engineer, we look at this, does it meet our regulations, drainage, road width, connection to the surrounding community. If this didn't have a Bell Road to connect to, and if Bell Road wasn't able to be improved, we might be having a different conversation right now. But our partners at the street department and the fire department have met with us and the applicant several times. I believe they're on their third engineer at this point to make this work. And it's finally at a point where I believe all those three parties, as well as our other review agencies like Gas and Water, are satisfied with the what is presented before you today. Does that help you, Mr. Kimbrough?
It does. And on that comment, I'm gonna have to make a motion for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
I want it noted that I abstained.
Commissioner Smith, were you the second on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Parker.
Now we will head into the site plan review portion of our agenda. After I read this statement, I'll have Mr. Parker read all the cases into the record, and then we'll see if anyone needs to poll this. All items in this portion of the agenda are to be considered routine and non-controversial by the staff of the Regional Planning Commission and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the audience, commission, or staff may request that an item be removed for separate consideration. Mr. Parker, please read the site reviews into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Case number SR 2624. The name of the site is McDonald's at 3326 Allen Road. That is within the city. The staff recommendation is for approval. Case SR 47-2024. The applicant's Kathy Kahn. Kathy's Pampered Paws Dog Boarding and Grooming at 127 Hadley Road. That is within the city. The staff recommendation is for approval. Case number SR 50-2024. Applicant is Choice Hotels International Services Corp. Companies. And the name of the site is Everhome Suites. It is a hotel at Stacy Johnson Boulevard on the proposed Lot 2 within the city. The recommendation is for approval. Case number SR 51. Thank you. Sorry Sorry about that. Those are with conditions, approval with conditions listed. Case number SR 51, the applicant's Wyatt's Body Shop. It's at 420 Palmyra Road. Within the PGA of the growth plan, the recommendation is for approval, subject to the 4 conditions listed. Case number SR 52, 2024, the applicant's Powers Commercial. It's store lot self-storage exit 8. This is a revised plan at 1245 Rossview Road. It's within the city. The staff recommendation is for approval, subject to the 4 conditions listed. Case number SR 53, 2024. The name of the site is Gerber Collision Auto Repair. The location is Pea Ridge Road, on the west side of Pea Ridge Road within the city. The staff recommendation is for approval, subject to the 2 conditions listed. Case number SR 54, 2024 is PTL Properties Paint Shop Expansion. It's a warehouse location at 4581 Guthrie Highway. That is within the rural area of the growth plan, and it is recommendation for approval, no conditions listed. Case number SR 55, 2024. The name of the site is West Nashville Wrecker Tow-In Lot. It is at 181 Terminal Road. That is within the city, and it is approval subject to the 2 conditions listed by the staff. And case number SR 56 is Landrum Place Townhomes. That is at 312 Landrum Place in the city. The staff recommendation is for approval, subject to the 2 conditions listed. Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioners, you heard the cases. The staff does not need to pull any of these from the agenda. Commissioners, do you need to pull any individual cases for consideration? All right. Public, or is there anyone here that would like to discuss one of the cases on the agenda? Yes, sir.
SR 26, 2024.
26. We will pull 26 from the agenda for separate consideration. Is there anyone else in the public? Any of the site plans that you want to discuss? Otherwise, they will all be approved with their conditions that Mr. Parker read into the record. Okay, Mr. Chairman, with the exception of SR 26, the rest can be considered on a consent agenda.
Commissioners, let's do the consent agenda first, and then we'll come back and pick up SR 26.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda on the site reviews with the staff's conditions.
Second.
Got a motion on property made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay. Let's go.
Note that I abstain from SR 52.
Let's go back to SR 26.
Okay, Commissioners, SR 26, 2024. Again, this is McDonald's at 3326 Allen Road. Within the city, it's zoned C5. The staff recommendation is for approval, subject to the 4 conditions listed. I'll read those into the record. Approval of all grading, drainage, and water quality plans by the city street department to include road and sidewalk improvements as required. Approval and recording of minor plat. Approval of utility plans by the city engineer's office. Approval of a TDOT access permit. Department comments are listed below that. If you'd like to go to page 3, you'll see the aerial overview of the site. On page 4 is the proposed site plan, and page 5 and 6 are follow-ups to that, and then page 7 is the proposed landscape plan. If there's any questions for the staff, I'll be happy to try and answer those. Otherwise, we'll need a public hearing. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in public hearing for site review item number 26. That's case number 10 on the agenda. The owner, well, it's for the development of a McDonald's. I'm assuming that's the fast food McDonald's. So anyone like speak in favor or about this review?
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Ford. My address is 400 Canyon Creek Trail, Fort Worth, Texas, 76112. And I'm here on behalf of McDonald's. I am the applicant of this one, so Leslie Ford of Ufichito. We're mainly here to answer any questions or to address any concerns with the council or the membership of the audience. So If you guys have any questions for us, we welcome those. If not, we'll let anyone else speak, and then we'll come back and answer any concerns.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. I'm assuming there are no other speakers in favor. Are there any here who would like to speak against SR 26?
Good afternoon. My name's Derek Cook. I live at 104 Melanie Lane. I have lived in that area for the last 15 years and have watched it explode. Approvals left, right, and center, to the point where the traffic is horrendous. During certain parts of the day, you cannot get onto Tiny Town Road. You have to get a light. Well, the light's at Allen Road right now. We're gonna put a McDonald's there on a skinny 2-lane, no shoulder road that backs up because it's also a back way to Fort Campbell and Oak Grove. Adding one more place is just going to make the traffic even worse. Lots of safety issues. Where I live at, there was 8 crosses in front of our neighborhood. They since took them down because we have had so many accidents, deaths, because of the traffic. Young drivers, and there's actually a McDonald's on each end of Tiny Town. 4.3 miles and 3.9 miles. And so adding one more, and that's on top of everything else just this year that is being added. The Starbucks, strip malls, Dollar General, Whataburger, everything else. That particular area on Allen Road where the McDonald's is gonna be, there's already a new housing area that's gonna be going behind that. More traffic leading onto the same narrow 2-lane, no shoulder road. And in the big field is supposed to be another housing area coming, which is just going to block this whole area up. Something's gotta give. Either we need to improve the infrastructure or stop approving these. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Anyone else who would like to speak against SR 26? Okay, Ms. Ford, you've got an opportunity for a rebuttal.
Thank you. So while we do definitely understand the concerns of the neighborhood, we have worked with both the city and the developer, the overall property developer, to make sure that there are multiple ways to mitigate traffic. We have incorporated the city's road widening plans for Allen Road into our plans, which I know is a bigger undertaking that I think has currently started from what I saw at site today. And then also, if you look at our site plan, we actually are providing an access road that goes around our property and hits over to Tiny Town Road. So our hope is that not only will we come in to help kind of mitigate some of that traffic through the use of the city's widening of the roads, but then also the development here will help mitigate some of the traffic that may be going into some of this new development. It may even come from the additional development with the new houses and with the rest of the work the developer is doing. Overall, this has been designed, I believe, with input from city staff and the county staff to make sure that everything that's here and shown will not add to further congestion and will implement the plans that you guys have had for widening these roads and making the access more attainable for the rest of the neighborhood. So overall, I think what we've designed helps mitigate the concerns of the neighborhood and then also helps with the city's widening plans to make sure that we're a good neighbor to the townhomes behind us and the future residents that are coming with the development.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford. Commissioners, our public hearing is closed now. Probably, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me back up. Chris? Or Joe, either one of you that
Feel safe.
know you love speaking.
Well, I didn't hear a question in that, but I thought I'd come up here anyway.
Could you just give the commissioners a status of that? I know we've seen of the Allen Road improvements, because I know we also have some improvements tied to a development on the other side of the road that hasn't quite started yet, but there are some other improvements going on out there. Can you just give us an update of what those improvements are and how it impacts this site?
Correct. Yes, sir. Currently, the city has an intersection improvement project at the intersection of Allen and Tiny Town Road. The idea is to add additional lanes along Allen Road so that there's more stacking and storage to get through that signalized intersection in a more efficient manner. We're adding a separate left turn lane, a separate right turn lane, and a separate through lane to come through that intersection as you head south. And we will also carry at least a 3-lane section all the way back to the, I believe there's an apartment complex just a little bit north of this McDonald's development. And so the widening that the city's doing is going back at least that far. And a little north of that point, there is some, I believe it's residential development that is also adding additional homes on the opposite side of Allen Road, and we're making requirements of that development to widen as well to a 3-lane section and provide sidewalk along that section of Allen Road as well. So the goal is for everything from Tiny Town up through the residential development I spoke of to be at least 3 lanes wide through that section once all the development is completed. Did that answer your question?
But right now, the improvements are going from Tiny Town to the entry of the townhouses, and that's currently in design and construction?
Correct. That's under construction now, yes, sir.
How far would the sidewalks go? Sorry.
We currently, as new developments come along, we're going to require sidewalks along Allen Road. We have the one residential development that's north of here that we're going to require that. This McDonald's development is required to provide sidewalk all along their frontage as well, both on Tiny Town and on Allen Road.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Aren't you glad you came today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Okay, commissioners, it's back into regular session.
Make a motion for approval with the conditions.
Got a motion and properly made second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, the motion passes.
All right, commissioners, thank you for hanging with us so far today. We do have a couple items of other business, so if you'll open up your tablets to other business. The first item is a required public hearing for a pro-housing grant. If you remember back, for those of you who were here last year, we did apply for the HUD pro-housing grant. We did not receive it. It did go to several large cities, but they just opened up the second round this year for applications, and one of the required items is to hold a public hearing, so this is the best time to do it. In front of you here is Sam McKenna, one of our planners, and he is running point on this project, and he has a short presentation, and then we'll open up the public comment period if there are any. So without ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. McKenna.
Good afternoon. So a short 45 slide, hour and a half presentation for you all.
Better not be.
And I will stay with, any questions? No. If we can go to the next slide here real quick. So I know we had a initial round for this last year. I think we only had 2 commissioners show for this. It was kind of a shotgun try at it. And we actually received a lot of good feedback for this. And we'll kind of get into that later. But so what is the pro-housing grant? I'm basically going to cover that just for general consensus. But the Biden administration has funded for the second year to basically provide additional housing funding for all the United States and communities at every jurisdictional level to basically decide how they can remove obstacles or barriers to housing. So what that means is, what can you spend that money on? It can be through planning, it can be through infrastructure, it can be through a multitude of ways. And what we tried last year was just through planning. But since we've expanded that a little bit, and we'll kind of get into that on what we're actually going to try to do a little bit more here. But As long as it hits one of those three things at the bottom there, you can see further development, evaluate, and implement housing policy plans, improve housing strategies, or facilitate affordable housing production and preservation. And we just have to tie it into that. And without further ado, we'll go to the next slide here. So based on some of the feedback we received last year, HUD was apprehensive that our comprehensive plan was not approved yet. Since then, obviously, lots changed. We have implemented a county and city comprehensive plan. With that, we've launched into basically redoing the subdivision, or excuse me, the zoning regulations and resolution. We've also launched a housing needs assessment, which is in our chapter 11 of the comprehensive plan. And that's going to give us more data points we've talked about actually earlier in this meeting of what this county and this community actually needs. And that's going to tie down to our specific needs that we're going to locate. Actually, out of that draft housing needs assessment, you're going to see there, they identified 15,000 housing unit gap over the next 5 years. And that's going to come down to around 3,000 units. That's rental as well as purchase units. As far as acute needs as well, we have Fort Campbell, which has a very high, obviously, veteran population that stays local, and it's about 20% of our population. That creates a very unique housing market with BAH rates that rise incrementally every year. You'll see those rates come out, and our local community as well as our real estate community, they have those numbers, so that can set a base rate for rent as well as, you know, housing market prices. So that is something we have to deal with and consider, because it can be a plus, but it can also be a detriment. And those are things that we're going to identify to HUD to actually understand and see why our community is deserving of these funds. Also with the draft needs assessment, you can see there, we have a high renter, household renter to owner, 44 to 20, and those are all at 30% of income, housing burden for that number. Then out of that, 18% and 8% of those are 50% or severely housing burdened. So those are acute needs that we're identifying for them. And last, which we'll talk about here as well, is going to be the absence of a community-based organization, which is just someone who's advocating for organizations or just smaller communities within our organizations that can speak on the behalf of the people that live in those communities and not be government tied or RPC tied, and kind of have the best interests at heart for those people. Next slide, please. Like we mentioned with some of those barriers, our ordinance and our regulations, those are one of those things. We're looking to eliminate those with the new study of the zoning codes, as well as streamline some of those regulations. Obviously, our acute barriers are going to be growth and supply and demand issues. We already talked on the 3,000 housing units a year. Few of the ways we're looking to alleviate that is going to be with pre-approved plans for ADUs, allowing those in all zoning districts possibly. And that'll come with the study that we pushed through in the subdivision regulations as well. Next slide, please. All right, and another avenue that we're going to put forth a good chunk of these funds is going to be with the establishment of a land trust and a land bank. So part of this will be to basically clean up some tax lien property and then possibly sell it to back at market rate or below market rate. The only requirement that HUD has is that if you do build infrastructure or buy real property, that 51% at a minimum goes to affordable housing units. And so we haven't decided exactly where we're going to set that number, but I think based on how we meet that minimum, it'll be obviously exponential and match up. And then last, we have our community-based organizations, and I actually have our strategic planner here, Silas, to kind of guide that as well. But what we're looking to start up, we're going to have a seed fund to essentially stand up one unit. Right now in our persistent poverty locations, right now is the New Providence area to downtown. Is kind of like a pilot group to go forward, and what we're going to do is prioritize the 5 social determinations of health by the CDCs, which is essentially there on that. You can kind of see that, but it's basically access to education, healthcare, financial literacy, but like we talked about before, just having those access to all those things that provides health and obviously gives them that foot forward that other areas won't have. Next slide, please. So one of the benefits we do have is HUD does declare us as a priority geography. Now that's based on just housing need and how our housing stock isn't keeping pace with our growth. And drilling down even further, you can see that these persistent poverty areas, HUD is going to prioritize areas with poverty below, for minority populations below 20% or greater. And so a lot of those census tracts, obviously in the New Providence, we've got the downtown urban core as well as South Clarksville, those more than meet those minimums. And so those are going to be where we start our community-based organizations as well as our planning areas for the first 2 years. Next slide. This is going to just be a rough phase plan of what we're implementing. You can see the arrow there obviously stating where we're at currently. With fiscal year 24 ending up, and these are obviously going to be federal fiscal years. Thing to note as well, we were looking to do an annual housing needs assessment every year to kind of give us that benchmark and those metrics moving forward of where we want to be versus where we currently are. Of note as well, all projects must be complete by fiscal year 30, so September 30, 2030. All right, pending questions, go to the next slide. And then our total cost, right now we're proposing $2,400,000 for this. And you can kind of see the breakdown. We've got HUD funds will be $2 million, and then we are going to dedicate $400,000, which is 20% over a 6-year period. Next slide. And so this obviously is a requirement to have a public hearing. We are going to be accepting public comments, any comments from any stakeholder until 15 October at 3:30. And then the full application in draft will be available online at 1 October. You can submit any of those comments online or in person, pending any questions.
Can I get a copy of that to my email?
The slide or?
The slide. And then a question. The Land Bank Trust, who manages and maintains that if y'all are planning to buy $850,000 worth of land?
I think I'd like to let Silas answer that question. He's been our
It's a
guy
question.
running this to ground, yes.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So, according, there's a state statute that designates who can operate, and mainly it's a government or entity. So it's either the city or the county. But it also can be a 501c3, but it still needs to be incorporated by a city or a county. So, for instance, the city can operate it, and the county or the county. Or we could create a 501c3 that would operate it, and for all sake and purposes, the planning commission could oversee it until it sustains itself and functions in a manner where it can move on its own accord, but it still would be governed by a governmental entity. I know that's a lot, but that's just the statute.
And I think I'll add to the other half of Commissioner Smith's question was, what are we going to spend the money on? We've met with the trustee just recently, Kim Wiggins, and we've a little bit of a setback because our community does actually dispose of all their tax property every year. They do a very good job at that. For instance, our counterparts in Memphis only sell about 60% of their properties every year. That leaves 40% available for the government to then turn over as a land trust property. What this does, a land trust also can help clear titles. So if there's a family or an heir that can't clear a title, you can clear it. It can accept donations. It can also take city or county surplus property through the process and get it to the folks. Habitat is our known local builder. But if you work with other folks, such as a land trust and a land bank, you can do other types of construction as well, not just the typical Habitat house. That has a very specific need. There's other needs in our community as well. So we're exploring ways to set it up, but the more we go into it, I think we have to find the Clarksville way of doing it and not just the typical way some of our counterparts in the state have gone about it.
And then, can you go back one slide? Sorry. Back one more. Or no, that one. That was the right one.
Money.
Sorry. So, I see it's a match grant.
Yes.
So, is that already in the budget this year, the 400, or is that going to be in next year's budget?
It would be, if we receive it, it would be in next year's budget. So you're talking, in the end, it's really about $65,000 a year for 6 years to get $2 million. I think it's a very good bang for your buck.
For the 400,000.
But it boils down to $65,000 per year that
You
we'd have
divide
to.
that
By 6.
by 6. 400 by 6.
But, and the 2 million's over 6 years too, so.
Correct. It's not 400,000 a year and 2 million a year.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible. No, this is 2 million over 6 years.
Okay.
And so a little background on that as well. So the 400,000, and it comes from a percentage, right? If we matched about 10%, you get about 2 points. If you match 20%, you get another 4. So it was based on the feedback we got, just put a little more skin in the game, up our chances to kind of beat some of those others who have had another year to kind of get there.
So my question to you is, does it all have to be cash, or can it be in kind, such as land or services?
So it depends. So it is going to be in a dollar amount. So last year, we just basically broke it down to staff time is going to be dedicated to this project or this phase of this project. So it can be in both. We just
Okay.
got to make incrementally, you just got to show it on their budget spreadsheet. So
Okay.
it's not like we're just going to hand them a check every year. It's going to kind of be built into both.
There'll be a little cash, but we'll be able to make a lot of the hours up from these two guys, especially right here, in
Yeah.
terms of that 65,000 a year.
Yeah, I was just saying that way we don't think that we're going to be writing a check for 65, because there will be some sweat equity that'll be a
Yes.
part of that.
You
So
got it.
absolutely, thank you. Well, I'm excited.
I'm excited as well.
I'm expecting big things from you, sir.
We need a public
If anyone knows anyone at HUD. We do have to have a public hearing. I know not everyone's left here, but we do have to open the floor for a public hearing on this.
Okay, we got a public hearing about this grant, this PRO housing grant. Anybody here with anything they would like to get on the record? Mr. Burchett?
I think
Mr. McKay?
Affordable
I
housing.
think they're interested, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
I think they're interested. They've stayed for this meeting 2 hours.
They're wondering why.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing.
Sam, no other action needed, correct? Just the public hearing. Okay. Commissioners, the next item, second to last here, profit and loss statement for the last month. You see it before you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Real quick on that, Jeff, what
Yes,
is
sir.
the negative transportation revenue?
Sure.
6,269.
Ah, yes. We basically got
Based on
double
that?
refunded from Tennessee and the FHWA in that amount, so we had to pay back one of them that amount. So we basically got about $13,000 back, and we should have only gotten $6. It was an
Gotcha.
accounting error, so it was returned back to the TDOT agency.
One last thing. Did you change softwares or something recently?
I don't think so.
Process looks different.
You didn't used to give us a QuickBook. This is out of QuickBooks here.
We've got a new office manager, so he may be adjusting how this reports come out.
If possible, I like to look at comparatives. You know,
Okay.
we used to get comparatives where you could look back, oh, what was going on last year, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Just to see, you know, I like to look for variances.
You got it.
Thank you, sir.
You're the only one up here who would like to see those
That's what you do.
comparisons.
CPA.
I know.
But that is good.
We'll get that, and we'll do, for next month, we'll do August for you, so you can see that as well.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the profit and loss.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion properly made second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
The final item is really just, it doesn't even need to be endorsed or anything. Back in 2000, the state required all counties to have a joint economic community development board. And the mayors at the time did an interlocal establishing that board at the Regional Planning Commission, but gave it no additional duties or responsibilities or budget. And I know a few of you here have sat on that board over the years, and I hate to call it a nothing board, but it kind of was. We met 4 times a year. We discussed what was going on in the community. We really didn't have any actions to take. We had no money to do anything, and we had to send our minutes to the state. If you look at the ordinance, what they should have done in 2000 is dubbed the EDC, our Joint Economic Community Development Board, because there was a clause that said if you have a board that's already doing these things, that can fill the gap. We've talked to the state. They said, yeah, you can still do that, but you just have to update your interlocal. So what you're looking at here would be the interlocal agreement that would go to the city and the county that establishes the Economic Development Commission here as our Joint Economic Community Development Board, thereby kind of unpinning that rose from the Planning Commission and putting it on the EDC. Everything they already do meets what this, the state wanted you to do in 2000. So it really, in the end, is going to be one less board the mayors have to appoint people to, take a small board off of us that met 4 times a year for kind of nothing, and put it in its right place. So if you'd all like, I'll answer any other questions, but this will go forward to the city and the county next month.
Does that need a motion?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
We got one last item, and we've never had anybody take us up on this, but if there's anybody out there who wants to make a statement to the planning commission about anything other than what we talked about today. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.